You always told me that the most broken people sometimes need the gentlest hands to heal them. I never really understood what you meant until I witnessed something that changed my entire view of the world. Grandma, I need to tell you about a girl named Zarabelle Thornwick and a woman named Sage Washington, and how their story taught me that sometimes the most unlikely heroes walk among us every single day. It was my third month working at Thornwick Industries as a junior marketing assistant. You remember how excited I was to land that job, right? The gleaming towers, the marble floors, the promise of climbing the corporate ladder. But Grandma, nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to witness in those pristine hallways. Everyone whispered about her. Zarabelle Thornwick, the CEO's daughter. She's impossible, they'd say. A nightmare wrapped in designer clothes. They called her spoiled, cruel, untouchable. At 19, she'd already burned through 12 personal assistants, 3 tutors, and countless staff members who simply couldn't handle her explosive temper and cutting words. Her father, Maximus Thornwick, was one of the richest men in the country, but all his billions couldn't seem to buy his daughter happiness or even basic human decency, according to the office gossip. That first morning I saw her, Grandma, my heart actually stopped. She stormed through the executive floor like a hurricane in Louboutin heels, her platinum blonde hair flowing behind her like liquid silk, her ice blue eyes blazing with fury. She was screaming at some poor intern about coffee temperature, her voice echoing off the walls with such venom that grown men literally stepped out of her path. "You incompetent fool!" she shrieked, her face flushed red with rage. "I said 160 degrees, not 150. Do you have cotton for brains?" The intern, barely older than me, was practically in tears as Zarabelle hurled the coffee cup across the reception area. The hot liquid splashed across the white marble, staining it brown, and the cup shattered into 100 pieces. The poor kid ran off, probably to quit on the spot. But here's what stuck with me, Grandma. As I watched this scene unfold, frozen by my desk, I noticed something everyone else seemed to miss. For just a split second, as Zarabelle watched that intern flee, her face crumpled, not with satisfaction or smug pleasure like you'd expect from a spoiled brat. No, it was something else entirely. Pain. Deep, soul-crushing pain that she quickly masked behind another surge of anger. That's when I saw her for the first time. Sage Washington. She appeared like she'd materialized from any air, pushing her cleaning cart with quiet dignity. Sage was probably in her 40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and hands that moved with practiced grace. Her dark skin had a warm glow under the harsh office lighting, and there was something about her presence that immediately calmed the chaos around her. While everyone else scattered like mice when Zarabelle had her tantrums, Sage simply began cleaning up the mess. No judgment, no whispered comments, no fearful glances. She just knelt down and started picking up the broken pieces of the coffee cup, one by one, with the patience of a saint. Zarabelle stood there, still seething, but I noticed she'd gone quiet. She was watching Sage work, and for a moment, just a moment, that mask of anger slipped again. I saw confusion flicker across her face, then something that looked almost like shame. "You don't have to do that," Zarabelle said, her voice suddenly smaller, less commanding. Sage looked up from her work and smiled, not a fake, placating smile, but something genuine and warm. The way she said, "honey," not condescending or sarcastic, but with the same gentle affection you used to use with me when I was acting up as a child. It was like she could see right through Zarabelle's armor to the hurt little girl underneath. Zarabelle stood there for another moment, clearly struggling with how to respond. Nobody had ever called her honey before. Nobody had ever cleaned up her messes without complaint or lecture. Finally, she just turned on her heel and stalked away, but I caught her looking back over her shoulder at Sage one more time. That was the beginning, Grandma. The first crack in Zarabel's seemingly impenetrable walls. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention. Working in marketing meant I moved around the building a lot, and I began to notice patterns. Every time Zarabel had one of her explosions, and they happened almost daily, Sage would appear shortly after to clean up the damage. Sometimes it was coffee cups, sometimes papers thrown in rage, once even a laptop that got hurled across a conference room. But here's what was fascinating. Sage never seemed bothered by any of it. She'd hum softly to herself as she worked, occasionally nodding hello to other staff members, treating each mess like it was just part of her day. No frustration, no eye-rolling, no complaints to coworkers later, just quiet, patient work. And Zarabel started noticing too. I'd catch her lingering in hallways after her outbursts, waiting. At first, I thought she was admiring her handiwork, enjoying the chaos she'd created. But then I realized she was waiting to see Sage clean it up. She'd hide behind corners or pretend to be busy with her phone, but her eyes were always on the janitor. The real turning point came about a month later. I was working late, you know how dedicated I am to making a good impression, when I heard shouting from the executive floor. This wasn't unusual, but something about the tone made me pause. It wasn't Zarabel's typical rage-fueled tantrum. This sounded different, desperate, afraid.
I crept up the stairs, curiosity getting the better of me. And what I saw broke my heart, Grandma. Zarabel was in her father's office, but she wasn't alone. Maximus Thornwick was there, his face red with anger, his finger jabbing toward his daughter like a weapon. "You're an embarrassment," he was shouting. "Do you have any idea what your behavior is costing me? What it's costing this company? The board is asking questions, Zarabel. They want to know why my own daughter can't act like a civilized human being." Zarabel was pressed against the wall, tears streaming down her face, but her jaw was set in defiance. "Maybe because you never taught me how. Maybe because you were too busy counting your money to actually be a father." The slap echoed through the office like a gunshot. My hand flew to my mouth as I watched Maximus Thornwick strike his own daughter across the face. The sound seemed to hang in the air, and for a moment, neither of them moved. "You will learn to behave," he said, his voice now deadly quiet, "or you will find yourself cut off from everything. Do you understand me? Everything." Zarabel's hand was pressed to her cheek, her eyes wide with shock and pain, but she didn't back down. "I understand that you're exactly the monster everyone says you are." He raised his hand again, and I thought I might be sick. But before he could strike her a second time, there was a soft knock on the door. "Excuse me, Mr. Thornwick?" Sage's voice was gentle but firm as she peeked into the office. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to empty the trash bins. Building policy says all offices need to be cleaned before 9 p.m. It was clearly a lie. The cleaning crew never worked this late, and building policy certainly didn't require interrupting executive meetings. But Sage stood there in the doorway with such calm authority that even Maximus Thornwick seemed taken aback. He looked from Sage to his daughter, and I could see him wrestling with his image. He couldn't very well beat his child in front of a witness, not when he was trying so hard to maintain his reputation. "Fine," he spat. "We'll continue this conversation later, Zarabel. Think very carefully about your choices." He stormed past Sage without another word, leaving his daughter still pressed against the wall, tears streaming down her face. I expected Sage to quickly empty the trash and leave. That would have been the smart thing to do, the safe thing. Instead, she closed the door softly and approached Zara Bell like she was a frightened animal. "Oh, honey," she whispered, pulling a tissue from her cleaning supply cart. "Let's get you cleaned up." I couldn't hear everything they said from my hiding spot, but I watched Sage gently dab at Zara Bell's tears, her movements tender and maternal. Zara Bell didn't pull away this time. Instead, she seemed to crumble, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Sage guided her to a chair and knelt beside her, speaking in soft, soothing tones. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. It was the same voice you used with me, Grandma, when I'd wake up from nightmares as a child. Comfort without judgment, safety without conditions. That night changed everything. From that day forward, Zara Bell's behavior began to shift in small but noticeable ways. She still had her moments. Old habits die hard, but there were fewer thrown objects, fewer screaming matches with staff. Instead, she seemed to seek out Sage's presence. I'd see her find excuses to be in areas where Sage was working. She'd spill something, accidentally, just to have Sage come clean it up. She'd linger by the janitor's closet, pretending to be on important phone calls, but really just waiting for Sage to emerge. And Sage, bless her heart, seemed to understand exactly what was happening. She'd greet Zara Bell with that same warm smile every time, would ask about her day, would treat her like she mattered, not because of her father's money, but because she was a human being worthy of kindness. The conversations started small. Sage would hum while she worked, and Zara Bell would ask about the songs. Sage would mention the weather, and Zara Bell would share that she had been thinking of taking up gardening. Nothing earth-shattering, but for a girl who'd spent her whole life being feared rather than befriended, these simple exchanges were revolutionary. I learned more about their growing relationship through overheard conversations and careful observation. Sage had grown up in poverty, one of 6 children raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep them fed. She'd earned her GED while working nights to support her younger siblings, and had been sending money home to her family for 20 years. She'd been married once, to a man named Jerome, who died in a car accident just 2 years after their wedding. They'd been trying to have children, but it wasn't meant to be. Instead, Sage had poured her maternal instincts into caring for others, her siblings, her neighbors, and now, surprisingly, the loneliest rich girl in the city. Zara Bell had been raised by a parade of nannies and boarding schools. Her mother had died when she was 7, cancer, quick and brutal, and Maximus had dealt with his grief by throwing himself into work and throwing money at her daughter's problems. Every tantrum had been met with expensive gifts instead of attention. Every cry for help had been answered with threats and ultimatums. She'd learned early that the only way to get any reaction from her father was to cause problems. Bad attention was better than no attention at all. But with Sage, she was discovering something entirely different. Unconditional positive regard from someone who expected nothing in return. The breakthrough came 3 months after that night in Maximus's office. I was delivering some marketing reports to the executive floor when I heard Zara Bell's voice coming from an empty conference room. But instead of shouting or crying, she was laughing. I peeked through the glass doors and saw her sitting at the long mahogany table with Sage, who was on her lunch break. They had a deck of cards between them, and Sage was teaching Zara Bell how to play spades. No, honey," Sage was saying, grinning. "You can't just throw down your highest card first. You gotta be strategic about it. Think about what everyone else might be holding." Zara Bell was concentrating intensely.
her tongue poking out slightly between her lips, the same expression she used to wear when she was destroying someone's career, now applied to learning card games. "But what if they're bluffing?" "Then you bluff better," Sage said with a wink. "Life's all about reading people, understanding what they need, and knowing when to fold and when to fight." They both burst into laughter at something I missed, and I realized I was witnessing something magical. For the first time since I'd known her, Zarabelle looked genuinely happy. Not the manic satisfaction she got from causing chaos, but real, simple joy. That's when I understood what you meant about broken people needing gentle hands, Grandma. Zarabelle hadn't needed more money, or stricter discipline, or better therapists. She'd needed someone to see her pain and respond with love instead of fear. But the story doesn't end there. In fact, the real test was yet to come. Word of their friendship began to spread through the office. At first, it was just curious whispers. "Have you seen the Thornwick girl talking to the cleaning lady?" But whispers have a way of reaching the wrong ears, and eventually they reached Maximus. I was in a budget meeting when his assistant burst in, face pale with panic. "Mr. Thornwick wants to see you immediately," she told our department head. "Something about inappropriate fraternization between staff levels." My blood ran cold. I knew exactly what this was about. Within an hour, the entire office was buzzing with news. Sage had been called into Maximus's office. The meeting lasted 20 minutes, long enough for everyone to speculate about what was happening, but not long enough for any of us to prepare for what came next. Sage emerged from the elevator carrying a cardboard box. Her eyes were red, but her chin was held high. She was walking toward the exit, and I realized with horror that she'd been fired. But before she could reach the door, Zarabelle appeared. "Sage, wait!" She ran across the marble lobby in her high heels, her designer dress flowing behind her. "Wait, please!" Sage turned, and the pain in her eyes was heartbreaking. "I'm sorry, honey. I have to go." "This is about me, isn't it?" Zarabelle's voice was thick with tears. "He fired you because of me." "Sometimes adults make decisions that don't make sense to us," Sage said gently, setting down her box and taking Zarabelle's hands in hers. "You're going to be okay, Zarabelle. You're stronger than you know." "But what if I'm not? What if I go back to being the person I was before?" "You won't," Sage said with absolute certainty, "because now you know what it feels like to be truly cared for. And once you know that feeling, you can't unknow it. You'll find it again, and when you do, you'll be able to give it to others too." They embraced right there in the middle of the lobby, while dozens of employees pretended not to watch. It was beautiful and heartbreaking and brave, and I felt tears streaming down my own face. But Zarabelle wasn't done fighting. She marched straight to her father's office, and this time she didn't knock. The entire floor heard her voice echoing through the hallways. "You want to know what's wrong with me, Dad? You want to know why I'm such an embarrassment? It's because you taught me that love has to be earned and can be taken away at any moment. It's because you showed me that people are disposable if they don't serve your purposes." I crept closer, unable to resist witnessing what might be the most important conversation of Zarabelle's life. "Sage is the first person who ever looked at me and saw something worth loving, not because of what I could do for her or what you could pay her, but just because I exist. She's the first person who ever treated me like I mattered, and you fired her for that. She was overstepping boundaries. Staff members don't socialize with family members. It's inappropriate."
Inappropriate? Zarabelle's laugh was bitter. You want to talk about inappropriate? How about a father who's never hugged his daughter? How about a man who thinks money can replace affection? How about someone who fires the only good influence in his child's life because he's threatened by genuine kindness? There was a long silence, and then Zarabel spoke again, her voice deadly quiet. "I'm done, Dad. I'm done trying to get your attention by being the person you made me. I'm done punishing everyone else for your failures as a parent. And I'm done letting you control my life with your money." "You're being dramatic, Zarabel. You'll calm down in a few days." "No, I won't. I'm leaving. I'm going to go find Sage, and I'm going to apologize for getting her fired. Then I'm going to figure out how to be the person she believed I could be, with or without your approval." I heard footsteps approaching the door and quickly ducked behind a corner as Zarabel emerged. Her face was streaked with tears, but her expression was determined. She walked straight to the elevator, and I never saw her enter her father's office again. The next few weeks were chaotic. Zarabel disappeared completely. No one knew where she'd gone, and Maximus was quietly going insane trying to find her. The office buzzed with rumors and theories, but nobody had any real answers. I found out what happened by accident about a month later. I was volunteering at a community center in the part of town where Sage lived, something I had started doing after witnessing their friendship, inspired to make a difference in my own small way. That's where I saw them again. Zarabel was wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt. Her platinum hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, she looked younger somehow, lighter, as she helped serve meals to families who couldn't afford groceries. And there was Sage beside her, teaching her how to ladle soup without spilling, both of them laughing as Zarabel struggled with the coordination. "I think you're supposed to aim for the bowl, honey," Sage teased as Zarabel splashed soup across the counter. "I'm trying. This is harder than it looks. How do you make it look so easy?" "Practice," Sage said, guiding Zarabel's hands. "And patience with yourself. You're learning a whole new way of being in the world. It takes time." I watched from across the room as they worked together, Sage teaching and Zarabel learning, both of them glowing with purpose. This wasn't charity work for show or tax benefits. This was real service, driven by genuine care for their community. During a break, I finally approached them. Zarabel looked surprised to see me, then wary. I was, after all, still connected to her old life. "I'm not here to spy," I said quickly. "I volunteer here sometimes. I wanted to say how proud I am of both of you." Sage smiled and squeezed my hand. "Thank you, honey. That means a lot." Zarabel was more hesitant. "You're not going to tell my father where I am, are you?" "Not if you don't want me to," I promised. "But can I ask, how are you managing? I mean, financially?" She laughed, and it was a sound I'd never heard from her before. Genuine mirth without an edge of cruelty. "I got a job at a coffee shop downtown. Turns out all those years of yelling about coffee temperature actually taught me a lot about making it. Who knew?" And I helped her find a little apartment above the shop. Nothing fancy, but it's hers. She's learning to take care of herself. It's the first place I've ever lived in that actually feels like home. The first place where I can just be myself without worrying about living up to impossible expectations or disappointing anyone. Over the next hour, they told me about their new life together. Not together romantically, that would be a different story entirely, but as chosen family. Sage had found a new job working for a cleaning company that served several downtown businesses. And Zarabel had not only gotten that coffee shop job, but was taking night classes to earn her GED, something she'd never needed to do thanks to private tutors and her father's donations to prestigious schools. "I want to understand what real people go through," Zarabel explained. "I want to earn things honestly."
Sage is helping me see that there's dignity in all kinds of work, and that being rich doesn't make you better than anyone else. It just makes you more responsible for helping others. They were planning to start a nonprofit together, a program to help other young people from wealthy families who were struggling with the isolation and pressure that comes with that kind of privilege. Zarabel wanted to use her inside knowledge of that world to reach kids before they became as broken as she had been. There are so many children out there like I was. Kids whose parents think money can replace love, who are acting out because they don't know any other way to get attention. Maybe if someone had reached me sooner, before I became so angry and hurt. You reached yourself in the end, Sage pointed out gently. That's what mattered. Sometimes we have to become completely broken before we can learn how to rebuild ourselves the right way.
As I walked home that night, Grandma, I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd witnessed. Here was a girl who'd had every material advantage in life, who'd been handed wealth and privilege and opportunity, but who'd been starving for the one thing money can't buy: unconditional love and acceptance. And here was a woman who had every reason to be bitter about her circumstances, who worked hard every day for a fraction of what Zarabel spent on shoes, but who had chosen to respond to cruelty with kindness, to meet pain with compassion. Together, they'd found something that neither could have discovered alone: the healing power of genuine human connection. The story could end there, and it would be beautiful. But life, as you always told me, has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. 6 months later, I was promoted to senior marketing coordinator, which meant I occasionally had to interface with upper management again. That's how I found out that Maximus Thornwick was sick. Not just sick, dying. Pancreatic cancer, aggressive, and inoperable. He had maybe 3 months left, according to the whispered conversations I overheard from his executive assistants. I struggled with what to do with this information. Did Zarabel have a right to know? Did she even want to know? After everything he'd put her through, would she care that the man who'd never been a real father to her was facing his mortality? In the end, I decided it wasn't my choice to make. But I also couldn't bear the thought of her living with regret if she never got the chance to say goodbye. I went back to the community center and found her during her volunteer shift. She was reading to a group of children, her voice animated as she acted out different characters from a picture book. The kids were enthralled, and watching her, I could see the woman Sage had always believed she could become: nurturing, patient, genuinely caring. "Can I talk to you privately?" I asked when she finished the story. We stepped outside, and I told her about her father's condition as gently as I could. Her face went through a dozen emotions: shock, pain, anger, sadness, and finally a kind of resigned acceptance. "How long does he have?" she asked quietly. "Not long, maybe a few weeks now." She was quiet for a long time, staring at the busy street without really seeing it. Finally, she said, "I need to talk to Sage." I offered to drive her to Sage's apartment, and we made the journey in thoughtful silence. Sage took the news with the same grace she brought to everything else, immediately focusing on what Zarabel needed, rather than the drama of the situation. "What does your heart tell you to do, honey?" she asked, taking Zarabel's hands in her own. "I don't know," Zarabel admitted. "Part of me wants to let him die alone the way he made me live. But another part, I keep thinking about what you said about forgiveness, how it's not about excusing what someone did, but about freeing yourself from the weight of carrying that anger." "Those are both valid feelings," Sage said gently. "There's no right or wrong choice here. You have to do what feels authentic to who you are now, not who you used to be." Zarabel spent the next 2 days wrestling with her decision. I watched her work through it with the same patience Sage had shown her, not rushing to judgment, not letting old patterns of reactivity take over, but sitting with the complexity of the situation until clarity emerged. Finally, she made her choice. The Thornwick Industries building felt different when we entered it together, Zarabel, Sage, and me. The marble floors still gleamed, the executives still bustled around with self-importance, but something fundamental had shifted. Maybe it was because I was seeing it through different eyes, or maybe it was because the woman beside me was no longer the angry, broken girl who'd once terrorized these hallways. Word of Zarabel's return spread quickly. By the time we reached the executive floor, a small crowd had gathered, pretending to be busy while stealing glances at the prodigal daughter. Some looked curious, others judgmental, but most just seemed confused by the transformation. The Zarabel they remembered wore designer armor and wielded cruelty like a weapon. This woman wore simple clothes and carried herself with quiet dignity. Where the old Zarabel demanded attention through chaos, this one drew it through presence. Maximus's assistant, a new one, I noticed, turnover remained high, initially tried to block our entrance to his office. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Thornwick isn't seeing visitors today." "I'm not a visitor," Zarabel said calmly. "I'm his daughter." The assistant looked between us uncertainly, clearly recognizing Zarabel, but thrown by her demeanor. Finally, she buzzed through to announce our arrival. "Send her in," came the weak reply through the intercom.
Maximus Thornwick looked like a shadow of his former self. The cancer had ravaged his body, leaving him gaunt and frail in his expensive suit, but his eyes were still sharp, still calculating, as he watched his daughter enter the office he'd once banned her from. "You came," he said simply. "I came," she replied. They looked at each other for a long moment, and I could feel the weight of years of pain and misunderstanding hanging between them like a physical presence. "How much do you know?" Maximus asked. "Enough." Zarabel took a seat across from his desk, not the chair she'd been pressed against that night, but one that put them on equal footing. "I know you're dying. I know you probably don't have long." He nodded, accepting her directness. "And you're here to gloat, to tell me I'm getting what I deserve for being a terrible father?" The old Zarabel might have done exactly that, but this woman, the one that Sage had helped nurture into existence, simply shook her head. "I'm here because I don't want to carry regret for the rest of my life. I'm here because someone taught me that healing is possible even when it seems impossible. And I'm here because despite everything, you're still my father." Maximus's composure cracked slightly. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, Zarabel. I know that. I was so afraid of losing you the way I lost my mother that I pushed you away instead. I thought if I made you tough, if I taught you that the world was harsh, you'd be better prepared for it. All I did was make you feel unloved." "I was unloved, but that wasn't entirely your fault. You were grieving too. You lost your wife, and you didn't know how to be both parents to a little girl who looked just like her." They talked for over an hour, and I watched something miraculous happen. Not a complete reconciliation. Some wounds are too deep to heal entirely, but a kind of peace, an understanding that they had both been doing the best they could with the tools they had, even when that best was nowhere near good enough. Maximus asked about her life now, and Zarabel told him about the coffee shop, about her volunteer work, about her plans for the nonprofit. His eyes widened when she mentioned Sage, and for a moment his old controlling instincts flared. "You mean the cleaning woman I fired? She's still in your life?" "Her name is Sage," Zarabel said firmly. And she's the reason I'm sitting here talking to you instead of celebrating your impending death. She taught me that love doesn't have conditions, that people can change if they're given the space and support to do it, and that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself as much as anyone else. Something shifted in Maximus's expression. I'd like to meet her properly, he said, to apologize. Sage had been waiting in the reception area, giving father and daughter privacy for their conversation. When Zarabel brought her in, Maximus struggled to stand from his chair, his pride warring with his physical limitations. Please sit, Sage said gently, approaching him with the same lack of judgment she'd shown his daughter. I'm Sage Washington. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Thornwick. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. I fired you for caring about my daughter when I should have been thanking you. You did what I never could. You showed her unconditional love. You don't owe me anything, Sage replied. I did what felt right to me. Your daughter is an extraordinary person. She just needed someone to see that potential and believe in it. She is extraordinary, he agreed, looking at Zarabel with something I'd never seen in his eyes before. Genuine pride, not in her accomplishments or behavior, but simply in who she was. And I wasted so many years being afraid of that instead of celebrating it. The three of them talked until Maximus grew too tired to continue. As we prepared to leave, he made a request that surprised all of us. Would you consider coming back? Not to work, I know that ship has sailed, but would you visit sometimes, both of you? I don't have long left, and I'd like to spend what time I have learning how to be a better man, even if it's too late to be a better father. Zarabel looked to Sage, who nodded encouragingly. We'll come, Zarabel said, but on one condition. When you're gone, you're going to leave me enough money to start that nonprofit properly. Not because I'm asking for it, but because it's the right thing to do. You spent years teaching me that money was power. Now I want to use that power to help other kids avoid becoming what I was. He smiled. The first genuine smile I'd ever seen from him. Consider it done. Those final weeks were a master class in grace, Grandma. Zarabel and Sage visited Maximus almost daily, sometimes together, sometimes separately. They brought him books from authors he'd never had time to read, played card games that Sage taught them both, and slowly, carefully, built something that resembled a family. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, still old wounds that ached when the weather changed, but there was also laughter, real laughter, and conversations that went beyond business and money and expectations.
Sage, with her infinite patience, helped bridge the gap between father and daughter. She'd share stories from her own life, talk about the challenges of forgiveness, and model the kind of love that doesn't keep score. Watching her work was like watching an artist paint, each stroke deliberate and purposeful, creating something beautiful from what had seemed like hopeless chaos. Maximus died on a Tuesday morning in early spring, with Zarabel holding one hand and Sage holding the other. His last words were, "Thank you," not to any god or higher power, but to the two women who'd shown him what love looked like in the final chapter of his life. The funeral was a spectacle, as you'd expect for a billionaire's send-off. Business associates, politicians, and society figures all came to pay their respects. But in the front row sat two women who'd known him not as a powerful CEO, but as a flawed human being who'd found redemption in his final days. After the service, as the crowd dispersed, I overheard two of Maximus's former business partners talking. "Shame about the daughter," one said. "Word is she's been living like a pauper, working in some coffee shop. All that money and she's thrown it away on bleeding heart nonsense." "Tragic," the other agreed. "Maximus must be rolling over in his grave."
I wanted to correct them, to tell them that they had it completely backwards, that Zarabel had found something worth far more than money, that her father had died proud of the woman she'd become. But before I could speak, Sage appeared beside them. "Excuse me, gentlemen," she said politely. "I couldn't help overhearing your conversation. You're talking about Zarabel Thornwick, aren't you?" They looked at her with barely concealed disdain. A black woman in a simple dress interrupting their important conversation. "Yes," one said dismissively. "And you are?" "I'm Sage Washington," she said with quiet dignity. "I'm the woman who helped raise that girl into someone her father could finally be proud of. And I'm here to tell you that you have no idea what you're talking about." Her voice never rose, never became confrontational, but there was steel beneath the silk. "That young woman you're dismissing has spent the last year learning what it means to earn something honestly, to work for others instead of just for herself, to build something meaningful instead of just inheriting it. Her father didn't die disappointed. He died grateful that his daughter had found her way to becoming someone worth knowing." The two men looked uncomfortable, clearly not expecting to be called out by someone they had assumed was beneath their notice. "She's planning to use her inheritance to start a foundation that will help other young people who are struggling with the isolation and pressure that comes with extreme privilege. She's going to turn her pain into purpose, her wealth into healing. If you think that's a waste, then you understand neither money nor legacy." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving them speechless behind her. I followed her outside, where Zarabel was standing by the limousine, looking lost in the crowd of mourners who'd known her father but never really known her. "You okay, honey?" Sage asked, slipping her arm through Zarabel's. "I think so. It's strange. I thought I'd feel angrier or sadder or something. Instead, I just feel peaceful, like a chapter is closing, but the story isn't over." "The best chapters are still ahead of you," Sage said with certainty. "Your father saw that at the end. He knew you were going to do something extraordinary with your life." "We're going to do something extraordinary," Zarabel corrected. "I can't do this alone, Sage. I need you. Not as an employee or a helper, but as family. As the mother I never really had." Sage's eyes filled with tears, and she pulled Zarabel into a fierce hug right there on the church steps. "I love you too, daughter," she whispered. "I love you too." "That was 2 years ago, Grandma. Today, the Thornwick Washington Foundation is one of the most innovative nonprofit organizations in the country. They work with wealthy families to provide therapy, mentorship, and community service opportunities for young people who are struggling with the isolation and pressure that comes with extreme privilege. Zarabel serves as the executive director, but she insists on working alongside the families they help, not above them. She still lives in that little apartment above the coffee shop, though she could afford a mansion. She still volunteers at the community center every week, though her calendar is packed with board meetings and donor events. And Sage? She's the Foundation's Director of Family Services, using the same gentle wisdom that transformed Zarabel to help other parents and children find their way back to each other. She's become a sought-after speaker, sharing her story at conferences and universities across the country. But more importantly, she's become exactly what she always was, a mother, not through birth, but through choice, not through biology, but through love. They live together now in a house they bought jointly in the neighborhood where they first started volunteering. It's not fancy, but it's filled with laughter and purpose and the kind of family dinners where everyone has a voice and everyone belongs. I visit them sometimes, and it never fails to amaze me how far they've both come.
Zarabel has learned to channel her intensity into passion for justice instead of rage at the world. She's dating a social worker named Phoenix Martinez, someone who loves her for her heart, not her bank account, and talks about maybe having children someday. Kids she can raise with the love and attention she never received.
Sage has found peace in ways I never thought possible. She's writing a book about second chances and chosen family. She's returned to school, working on a master's degree in social work. And most importantly, she's living proof that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't money or influence or connections. It's one person seeing the best in another and refusing to give up on that vision. Last month, I was invited to their annual Foundation Gala. It was held not in some fancy hotel, but in the community center where they first worked together. The guests included some of the wealthiest families in the city, but also the kids and families they'd been serving, all mixed together at tables decorated with handmade centerpieces created by the children in their programs. Zarabel gave a speech that night that had everyone in tears, talking about how Sage had shown her that the most valuable things in life can't be purchased. They can only be given freely and received with gratitude. "My father taught me that money equals power," she said to the crowd, "but Sage taught me that love equals transformation. My father showed me how to acquire wealth, but Sage showed me how to create worth. Money can buy you almost anything, but it can't buy you the one thing that matters most. Someone who sees your soul and chooses to love it anyway." Sage was sitting at the head table, tears streaming down her face as Zarabel continued. "I spent 19 years of my life being angry, destructive, and cruel because I thought that was the only way to get attention. I had every material advantage, but I was spiritually bankrupt. It took a janitor, a woman who society told me was beneath my notice, to show me what real wealth looks like. It looks like showing up for people when they're at their worst. It looks like believing in transformation, even when all the evidence suggests it's impossible. It looks like loving without conditions and forgiving without keeping score." The standing ovation lasted for 5 minutes. After the formal program ended, I found myself talking to some of the young people the foundation had helped over the past 2 years. Their stories were variations on the same theme. Kids from wealthy families who'd been acting out because they didn't know any other way to express their pain, who'd found healing through the combination of professional support and unconditional love that Zarabel and Sage provided. "She gets it," one 17-year-old girl told me. "Zarabel understands what it's like to have everyone hate you because you have money, even when the money doesn't make you happy. She doesn't judge us for being messed up. She just helps us figure out how to be better." "And Miss Sage," added a 15-year-old boy, she's like if you could have a hug in human form. She makes you feel safe enough to be honest about your problems." As the evening wound down, I watched Zarabel and Sage work together to clean up, the billionaire's daughter and the former janitor, side by side, treating the mundane task of clearing tables like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You know what I love most about our story?" Zarabel said to Sage as they stacked chairs. "What's that, honey?" "It proves that family isn't about blood or biology or even legal documents. It's about who shows up. It's about who stays. It's about who sees you at your absolute worst and chooses to believe in your absolute best." "Speaking of family," Sage said with a grin, "Phoenix called earlier. He wants to know if we're free for Sunday dinner at his parents' house. Apparently, his mother has been dying to meet the woman who tamed the corporate dragon." Zarabel laughed, that same genuine, joyful sound I'd first heard in the community center all those months ago. "Tell her the dragon was never tamed.
She just learned that she didn't have to breathe fire to protect herself. As I drove home that night, Grandma, I thought about all the lessons their story had taught me, about the power of seeing beyond surfaces to the pain underneath, about the courage it takes to love someone who's been taught that they're unlovable, about how the most profound transformations often begin with the smallest acts of kindness. But mostly, I thought about something you used to tell me when I was little, that angels don't always come with wings and halos. Sometimes they come with work uniforms and tired hands and hearts big enough to hold someone else's pain until that person is strong enough to hold it themselves. Sage Washington was Zarabelle's angel, but she was also so much more than that. She was a mother, a teacher, a friend, and a living example of what it means to respond to hatred with love, to meet cruelty with compassion, and to see possibility where everyone else sees only problems. And Zarabelle, she became proof that no one is beyond redemption if they're willing to do the hard work of change and if they're blessed enough to find someone who believes in their capacity for growth. Their story isn't a fairy tale, Grandma. There was no magic wand, no overnight transformation, no perfect happy ending tied up with a bow. What there was messier and more beautiful than any fairy tale. The slow, difficult, necessary work of healing and growth and learning how to love and be loved. I think about them whenever I'm tempted to write someone off, whenever I encounter a person who seems impossible to reach or too broken to fix. I remember that the angriest people are often the most hurt, that the cruelest behavior often springs from the deepest pain, and that sometimes all it takes is one person willing to see beyond the surface to the soul underneath.
I think about them when I'm struggling with forgiveness, when someone has hurt me and I want to hold on to that anger like armor. I remember Zarabelle choosing to visit her dying father, not because he deserved it, but because she deserved to be free from the weight of carrying resentment. I think about them when I'm feeling small or powerless, when it seems like one person can't possibly make a difference in a world full of problems. I remember Sage, armed with nothing but love and patience and an unshakable belief in human potential, changing not just one life, but countless lives through her example. Most of all, I think about them when I need reminding that family is something we create, not something we're born into. That love is a choice we make daily, not a feeling that just happens to us. That healing is possible at any age, at any stage, no matter how broken we think we are. Their foundation continues to grow, helping more families every year find their way back to each other. Zarabelle recently announced that she's expanding the program to include international work, partnering with organizations in other countries to address the unique challenges faced by wealthy families around the world. Sage has been invited to speak at the United Nations about the role of chosen family in healing generational trauma. She's also being courted by several universities who want her to develop curriculum around her approach to working with difficult youth. But when I asked them about these exciting opportunities during my last visit, they both said the same thing, that their greatest achievement isn't the awards or recognition or even the lives they've helped transform. Their greatest achievement is the family they've built together, the home they've created where love lives and grows and spreads to everyone who enters. Success isn't about how much money you make or how many people know your name, Zarabelle told me as we sat on their front porch, watching Sage tend to her garden. Success is about how much love you give and receive. It's about how many people are better off because you existed. It's about whether you left the world a little more beautiful than you found it. And family, Sage added, looking up from her tomato plants with dirt under her fingernails and joy in her eyes.
Family is about who helps you become the person you're meant to be. Blood might make you relatives, but love makes you family. As I write this letter to you now, Grandma, I can hear your voice in my memory saying the words you always said when I was struggling to understand why people behave the way they do. Hurt people, baby. But loved people, love people. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to love first. Sage was willing to love first. She looked at an angry, destructive, seemingly hopeless young woman and saw a daughter waiting to be born. She endured tantrums and cruelty and even job loss because she could see beyond Zarabel's behavior to her heart. And because of that love, patient, persistent, unconditional love, the world is a better place. Not just because one broken girl became a whole woman, but because that woman is now using her healing to heal others, creating ripples of transformation that will continue for generations. I don't know if you can hear me wherever you are, Grandma, but I want you to know that I finally understand what you meant about broken people needing gentle hands. I understand that the most difficult people to love are often the ones who need love the most. I understand that true strength isn't about having power over others, but about having the courage to be vulnerable, to forgive, to choose love even when it seems impossible. Thank you for teaching me to see beyond the surface to the story underneath. Thank you for showing me that everyone deserves a chance at redemption, that everyone has the capacity for change, that everyone needs someone who believes in their ability to grow. I carry your lessons with me every day, and I try to be for others what Sage was for Zarabel, a steady presence, a believing heart, a gentle hand extended to help someone rise. Because that's what love does, isn't it, Grandma? Real love sees potential where others see problems. Real love stays when things get difficult. Real love believes in transformation even when all the evidence suggests it's impossible. And sometimes, if we're very lucky and very brave, real love performs miracles that change not just individual lives, but the entire world. I love you, Grandma. Thank you for teaching me that no one is beyond hope, and that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply show up with love and refuse to give up on people, especially when they've given up on themselves. Your loving grandson, Marcus. P.S. I hope this story inspires anyone reading it to look for the sage in their own life, or better yet, to become a sage for someone else. In a world that often seems divided by differences, maybe the answer isn't in our bank accounts or our achievements, but in our willingness to see each other's humanity and respond with love. Maybe the most revolutionary act is choosing compassion over judgment, understanding over condemnation, and hope over despair. Maybe, just maybe, we all have the power to perform the impossible, if we're brave enough to love first and ask questions later. What do you think, Grandma? What stories of transformation have you witnessed in your own life? I'd love to hear them, and I know others would too, because stories like these remind us that miracles aren't just possible, they're happening around us. One gentle hand, one open heart, one act of love at a time.